I never thought I'd be the kind of father who'd kick down a door. But then again, I never thought my father-in-law would be the kind of man who'd put my son in danger. My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm a software engineer in Fairfield, Connecticut. 38 years old, married to Lisa for 10 years, father to Jake, who just turned 7 last month. We have what most people would call a good life. Stable, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. Lisa teaches 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary. She's the kind of teacher kids remember forever, patient, creative, always finding ways to make learning fun. This particular weekend, she was at a 3-day educational conference in Boston, something about new literacy frameworks. She'd been looking forward to it for months, which left me solo parenting Jake for the weekend. Not a problem. We had plans mini golf on Saturday, maybe catch a movie, order pizza. Father-son time. I was actually looking forward to it. Then Richard called. Richard Thornton, my father-in-law, retired municipal judge, pillar of the community, member of every civic organization in Fairfield County. The kind of man who still wears a suit jacket to backyard barbecues. The kind of man who corrects your grammar mid-conversation and somehow makes you feel grateful for it. He'd always made me uneasy, though I could never quite put my finger on why. Maybe it was how he'd look at Jake sometimes, this intense, evaluating gaze, like he was assessing a piece of property. Maybe it was the way he'd criticize how Lisa and I were raising our son. Boys need structure, Marcus, he'd say, shaking his head when Jake would cry over a scraped knee. You're making him soft. When I was his age, tears meant punishment. That's how men are built. Lisa would defend me, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. Richard was her hero. The man who'd raised her alone after her mother died when she was 5. She saw him as noble, sacrificing, strong. She couldn't see what I saw. Or maybe I was just paranoid. Marcus, Richard's voice was warm when I answered his call. Friday evening, I heard Lisa's away this weekend. Yeah, conference in Boston. Back Sunday night. Well, I have a proposition for you. There's a luncheon tomorrow at the Fairfield Gentlemen's Association. Very exclusive group judges, lawyers, business leaders. We meet monthly. I'd like to bring Jake. I felt my stomach tighten. Jake? He's 7. Exactly. The perfect age to start learning about real masculinity, about tradition. We have a youth mentorship component. Teach boys about honor, discipline, the values that built this country. He paused. Values that seem to be disappearing in your generation, if I'm being frank. There it was. The subtle dig. The implication that I was failing as a father. I don't know, Richard. Jake had his heart set on mini golf tomorrow. Mini golf. He said it like I'd suggested, teaching Jake to knit. Marcus, this is an opportunity. These are powerful men. The connections he could make. He's 7. And when I was 7, I was already learning to navigate adult spaces. It's how you build confidence. Or would you rather keep him wrapped in bubble wrap until he's 30? I should have said no. Every instinct screamed no. But Lisa's voice was in my head. Dad just wants to be involved. He loves Jake so much. Please try to include him. And my own insecurity. That small voice that wondered if Richard was right, if I was too soft, too protective. What time? I heard myself ask. I'll pick him up at 11. We'll be done by 3. 4 hours, Marcus. Surely you can spare your son for 4 hours so he can learn what it means to be a man. The hook was set. Saturday morning, Jake was bouncing with excitement. Richard had called him the night before, made it sound like some grand adventure, a secret club where important things happen. Jake had barely slept. Is it like a superhero headquarters, Dad? He asked while I made pancakes. I don't think so, buddy. Grandpa said there would be other boys there, and we get to see special things. Secret things. Something cold slithered down my spine. What kind of secret things? Jake shrugged, pouring too much syrup on his pancakes. He said it's a surprise. But it's okay, because all the men there are good men. Important men. I set down the spatula. Jake, listen to me. If anything makes you uncomfortable today, anything at all, you tell Grandpa you want to leave. Or you call me, okay? Why would I be uncomfortable? Just promise me. He rolled his eyes in that way 7-year-olds do when their parents are being weird. Okay. I promise. Richard arrived at 11 sharp, driving his immaculate silver Mercedes. He was wearing a 3-piece suit despite it being 85 degrees outside. Ready, young man? He asked Jake, who was already racing toward the car. I followed them out. Richard, just to be clear what exactly happens at these meetings? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Networking, mentorship, building character. Nothing you'd understand, Marcus. No offense. Where is it? I'll need an address. The association has a private facility. Members only, but don't worry, I'll have him back by 3. Richard. Marcus. His voice hardened. Are you really going to insult me by implying I can't keep my own grandson safe? After everything I've done for this family? Jake was already buckled in the back seat, waving at me through the window. I swallowed my objections. 3 o'clock. Not a minute later. Of course. I watched them drive away, and that cold feeling never left. The first hour was fine. I caught up on work emails, did laundry, tried not to think about the look in Richard's eyes when he said secret things. By 1 o'clock, I was pacing. Checked my phone every few minutes. Texted Lisa in Boston. Jake's with your dad. Some mentorship luncheon thing. She replied immediately. That's so sweet. Dad's always wanted to do more with Jake. I'm glad you're letting him in. Letting him in. Like Richard was some kind of gift I was withholding. At 1:47, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad? My heart stopped. Jake didn't have a phone. We'd specifically decided he was too young. Jake? Whose phone is this? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Like he was typing and deleting, trying to figure out what to say. Dad, the men here are weird. My hands started shaking. What do you mean weird? Where's Grandpa? He's here. But there's other men too. A lot of them. They keep looking at me. I was already moving toward my car, phone pressed to my ear. I tried calling the number. It rang once, then went to a generic voicemail. Another text. They want to take pictures. I called again. This time, Richard answered. Marcus. Everything's fine, we're just. Put Jake on. Now. He's being dramatic. You baby him too much, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Put my son on the phone, or I'm calling the police. A pause, muffled voices. Then Jake's small, scared voice. Dad? I'm coming to get you right now. Where are you? I don't know. A big house. It has a... The phone was yanked away. Richard again, and now I could hear the anger beneath his controlled tone. Marcus, you're embarrassing yourself. We're simply documenting the new youth members for our records. It's tradition. Every boy who joins gets a formal portrait. He's not joining anything. Tell me where you are. Right now, wearing our club blazer, very dignified. But Jake is being difficult. Won't take off his shirt for the photographs. My blood turned to ice. What did you just say? The portraits are shirtless from the waist up. Classical style, like Greek statuary. It's artistic, Marcus. God, your generation sees perversion everywhere. I hung up and called 911. My son is being held against his will by my father-in-law and a group of men who are trying to photograph him without his clothes. I need police now. I gave them Richard's name, his address. The dispatcher stayed calm, asked questions. Did I know where the child was currently located? No. Was there immediate danger? Yes. Was I en route? Already in my car. Sir, I need you to stay calm and... Another text from the unknown number. Dad, I'm scared. I locked myself in a bathroom, but Grandpa is knocking. He sounds mad. I typed back with shaking hands. Don't open the door. I'm coming. 5 minutes. It was actually 12 minutes. 12 minutes of breaking every traffic law in Connecticut, running red lights. My mind conjuring horrible images of what classical portraiture might really mean. The address was in Southport, an old colonial in one of those neighborhoods where every house costs millions, but looks like it was built in 1750. Historic, respectable, perfect camouflage. I saw Richard's Mercedes in the circular driveway, 3 other luxury cars. I didn't bother parking properly, just abandoned my Subaru at an angle and ran for the front door. It was locked. I pounded on it, rang the bell, pounded again. Yake. No answer, but I could hear voices inside. Male voices, laughter. I stepped back and kicked the door. The frame splintered but held. Kicked again. The doorknob assembly broke free, and the doors swung open. The foyer was marble and dark wood, expensive art on the walls. I followed the voices to a staircase leading down. The basement had been converted into some kind of lounge. Leather chairs, a bar, mahogany paneling, and 6 men, all over 60, all in suits, all turning to stare at me with expressions ranging from surprise to annoyance. Professional camera equipment on tripods, lights, a backdrop setup, and Richard, standing in front of a bathroom door, his face red with fury. "Marcus, this is a private. Where's my son? He's locked himself in the bathroom like a child. You've spoiled him, made him frightened of his own masculinity." I shoved past him and tried the bathroom door. "Jake, it's Dad. You can come out." The lock clicked. The door opened a crack, and Jake's tear-stained face appeared. He was still fully clothed. Thank God. He pushed the door open and threw himself at me, sobbing. I picked him up. He was getting big for this. But adrenaline made him weightless and turned to face Richard and his friends. "What the hell is this?" One of the other men stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. He had the smooth confidence of someone used to being believed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is the Fairfield Heritage Association. We mentor young men by photographing them shirtless. It's a tradition dating back to 1962. All former youth members have these portraits. It's about classical aesthetics. The male form is art. He's 7 years old. And participation is voluntary. If Jake was uncomfortable, we wouldn't have. You tried to coerce him. He locked himself in a bathroom." Richard's voice was cold. "He was being difficult because you've raised him to be soft. Afraid of his own body, like there's something shameful about. There's something shameful about a room full of old men wanting to photograph a child without his shirt on." I looked at each of them in turn. "You're going to delete whatever photos you already took. Then I'm leaving with my son, and if any of you ever contact my family again, I will destroy you." "Marcus." Richard's tone shifted, became almost gentle. "Dangerous. You're not thinking clearly. I'm a retired judge. These men are lawyers, a state senator, the CEO of Thornton Medical. If you make accusations, if you try to besmirch our reputations with your perverse interpretations, then I'll go to the media. See how the optics play. Retired judge photographs minors in secret club. Even if it's technically legal, how do you think that sounds?" The senator, I recognized him now, from campaign sign, stepped forward. "Now, let's everyone take a breath. Clearly, this was a miscommunication. Perhaps if we just..." Sirens. Getting closer. I smiled. "I called the police before I came. They should be very interested in your photography setup." The room erupted, the men scrambling, grabbing at cameras, memory cards. Richard just stared at me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Not anger, not embarrassment. Hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "To your marriage. To your family. Lisa will never forgive you for this." "We'll see." The police arrived. 2 officers. One young and skeptical, one older and weary. The older one took one look at the setup and his expression hardened. "Who's in charge here?" Richard immediately shifted into his judge persona. "Officers, I'm Richard Thornton, retired municipal judge. This is a private association, members only, and this man pointing at me has broken into private property. After my minor son called me, saying he was being pressured to remove his clothing for photographs. I held up my phone, showing the texts. The young officer looked uncomfortable. The older one asked to see the cameras. "That's private property," one of the men protested. "You need a warrant." "I need probable cause," which I have. "Step away from the equipment." What followed was chaos. The men arguing about rights and privacy and traditions and misunderstandings. Richard's face getting redder, Jake clinging to me, face buried in my shoulder. The older officer pulled me aside while his partner dealt with the men. "These texts, this came from whose phone?" "I don't know. Not Richard's. Someone else gave Jake a phone to contact me." "That's interesting." He looked back at the group. "You know who these men are?" "Some of them. Powerful people." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Chen. Unless we find something obviously illegal, actual child pornography, evidence of assault, this is probably going to go nowhere. What they're describing, this classical portraiture thing, it's weird as hell, but if they've got documentation showing it's a decades-old tradition, if they can claim artistic merit, you're saying they'll get away with it. I'm saying you should document everything. Those texts, your son's statement, everything. Because powerful men have a way of making problems disappear." He glanced at Richard, especially when one of them used to wear a robe. "They took statements, photographed the setup, confiscated memory cards, pending investigation. The men were all lawyers or rich enough to afford them, so they knew to say nothing. Driving home with Jake, my hands were still shaking. "Dad?" Jake's voice was small. "Am I in trouble?" "What?" "No. Baby, no. You did exactly right. You told me when something felt wrong. You protected yourself. Grandpa said I was being babyish. That real men don't run away." I pulled over, turned to look at him in the back seat. "Jake, listen to me. Real men protect themselves and other people. Real men trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. You don't owe anyone your comfort, your body, your sense of safety. Not even family. Especially not family. Are you mad at Grandpa?" "Yes." "Is Mom going to be mad at you?" That was the question, wasn't it? I called Lisa from the car. She answered on the second ring, bubbly from whatever conference session she'd just attended. "Hey, how are my boys?" "Lisa, we need to talk. Something happened with your dad." The bubbliness evaporated. "What do you mean?" I told her everything. The club, the texts, the photography setup, the basement, the police. With every sentence, the silence on her end grew heavier. When I finished, she said, "This is insane." "I know." "No, Marcus. I mean, your story is insane. My father would never. This is some misunderstanding you've blown completely out of proportion." Jake locked himself in a bathroom because grown men wanted to photograph him without his shirt. For a portrait. He told me about the Heritage Association. It's a legitimate organization. Of old men photographing young boys. You're twisting everything. God, you've always been jealous of my relationship with Dad, and now you're using this to... Lisa, our son was scared. He texted me for help. Because you've made him afraid of everything. You won't let him play football. You won't let him climb trees without a helmet. You've wrapped him in so much anxiety. This is different. Is it? Or is this your paranoia finally finding something to latch onto? My jaw clenched. "Come home. Look at the text yourself. Talk to Jake. Then tell me I'm paranoid." She hung up. Jake was crying again in the back seat. "Mom thinks I'm lying?" "No, buddy. She's just confused. She'll understand when she gets home." But I wasn't sure I believed that. Lisa came home early, Sunday morning instead of Sunday night. I heard her car in the driveway, heard the front door open. I was making coffee, hadn't slept more than an hour all night. She came into the kitchen, and I saw it immediately. She'd been crying. But she'd also hardened herself, prepared for battle. "Where's Jake?" "Still asleep. We need to talk first." I talked to my father. He explained everything. The Heritage Association has been photographing youth members since 1962. There are hundreds of these portraits. It's about classical masculinity, Greco-Roman tradition. "Lisa, stop, please. Just stop and think about what you're saying." "What I'm saying is that you broke into a private residence, assaulted my father. I never touched him. Traumatized our son with your paranoid delusions. And called the police on a legitimate organization. A room full of old men wanted our 7-year-old son to take his shirt off for photos. Lisa, does that sound right to you?" She faltered, just for a second. Then, in context, there is no context where that's okay. You don't understand, because you don't come from tradition. You don't understand the importance of what? Of making children uncomfortable for the sake of tradition. Of ignoring their fear because respecting authority is more important than their autonomy. Her eyes flashed. My father raised me. Alone. He sacrificed everything. And I'm grateful for that. But being a good father to you doesn't mean he's safe with Jake. How dare you? Lisa. I took a breath, tried to find calm. I need you to read Jake's texts. Look at them yourself. I don't need to read anything. I know my father. Do you? That's when I saw it, a crack in her certainty, a flash of doubt. But she covered it quickly, armor snapping back into place. I'm taking Jake to my dad's tonight. So, he can apologize for his behavior. Absolutely not. He's my son too, Marcus. And I will not let you put him in a situation where he's being pressured to apologize for protecting himself. We stared at each other across the kitchen island, and I saw our marriage cracking down the middle. Then maybe, Lisa said slowly, you and I need to reevaluate some things. The next few days were Cold War. Lisa slept in the guest room, communicated through terse texts. Jake was confused, withdrew into himself, stopped talking about what happened. I made an appointment with a child psychologist. Dr. Sarah Rains came highly recommended. She spent an hour with Jake, then called me in. Mr. Chen, your son is describing a situation that made him very uncomfortable. Regardless of intent, he felt pressured and unsafe. That's real. That matters. His mother thinks I'm overreacting. Dr. Rains was quiet for a moment. I've worked with a lot of families in crisis, and I've learned that sometimes the most dangerous situations are the ones that look respectable on the surface. Can I ask you something? Sure. Has your father-in-law ever done anything else that made you uncomfortable? Even small things? I thought about it. The way Richard would insist on giving Jake baths when he'd visit, even when Jake was old enough to bathe himself. The wrestling that would leave Jake in tears. The jokes about Jake's body, his development. Things I'd dismissed as old-fashioned, inappropriate but not dangerous. Yeah, I said slowly. Yeah, there have been things. Document them. All of them. Because if this goes to court custody, restraining orders, anything, you'll need a pattern. That night, I started writing. Every incident I could remember. Times Richard had been alone with Jake, and Jake had come back quieter, more withdrawn. The time Jake was 5, and told us he didn't want Grandpa to give him baths anymore, and Lisa had overruled him because Grandpa's feelings would be hurt. The comment Richard made about Jake's delicate features and how we needed to toughen him up before the world eats him alive. Individually, they seemed minor. Together, they painted a picture I'd been too afraid to see. I also started digging into the Fairfield Heritage Association. It wasn't easy. They had no public website, no social media presence. But I had a friend from college, Maria Rodriguez, who'd become a paralegal at one of Hartford's big firms. I called her, explained the situation. Jesus, Marcus. That's suspicious. Can you find anything? Articles of incorporation, member lists, anything? I'll try. But if they're private and careful, it might be buried. 3 days later, Maria called back. Okay, so the Fairfield Heritage Association is registered as a 501c7 social club, filed in 1961. And here's the interesting part: in 1993, there was a lawsuit, sealed, but I have a friend in the clerk's office who owes me a favor. What kind of lawsuit? Civil suit filed by a mother against the association and Richard Thornton specifically. Her son was a mentee in the program in the late 82nds. She alleged inappropriate conduct, specifically related to these photography sessions. Claimed they were grooming behavior. My stomach dropped. What happened to the case? Settled out of court. Sealed records, NDA. But the fact that it happened, that there was enough there to warrant a settlement. Can you get the sealed records? Not legally. But Marcus, if this goes to an actual investigation, if you can convince a prosecutor there's a pattern, how many other cases? I found 2 more. Different families, different years, 1,987 and 1,998. Both settled, both sealed, all involving the youth mentorship program. 3 cases, 3 families who'd seen something wrong and been silenced with money and legal intimidation. I hung up and immediately called the detective who'd taken my initial report. Detective Sandra Morrison had been kind but realistic when I'd followed up earlier in the week. Mr. Chen, without evidence of actual abuse, this is a he said situation. And frankly, Judge Thornton's reputation carries weight. But when I told her about the sealed lawsuits, I heard her tone change. Send me everything you have. I'm going to kick this to someone in our special victims unit. That night, I showed Lisa the information Maria had found. She read it at the kitchen table, her face getting paler with each page. This doesn't mean. Lisa, 3 lawsuits, all sealed, all involving the same program. But they were settled. That could mean they were frivolous, that Dad settled just to avoid the hassle. Or it means he and his friends paid people to keep quiet. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not anger, not defensiveness. Fear. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe your father isn't who you think he is. Don't. Her voice broke. Don't make me choose between you and my dad. I'm not. I'm asking you to choose Jake. To choose protecting our son over protecting your father's reputation. She stood up, hands shaking. I need to think. She left. Went to her sister's house in New Haven. Took Jake with her, which terrified me, but her sister Amanda was solid. Had never liked Richard much. I trusted her to keep Jake safe. The investigation moved slowly. Detective Morrison and her partner interviewed the other men from that day. They all told the same story: legitimate organization, decades of tradition, artistic merit. The boy's father overreacted. But Morrison was persistent. She found two of the families from the sealed lawsuits. One refused to talk, still bound by their NDA and too afraid to break it. But the other, the mother from the 1993 case, she was willing to talk. Her name was Patricia Walsh. Her son had been in the program when he was 8 years old. Richard had been his primary mentor. He came home from one of those sessions, Patricia told Morrison in a recorded interview she later shared with me, and he was different, quiet. Wouldn't tell me what happened. I pushed, and finally he broke down. Said the men had taken pictures, lots of pictures. That they told him it was normal, that all boys did this. That if he told anyone, people would think he was dirty for even being uncomfortable. What kind of pictures? Morrison asked. He wouldn't say exactly, but he was shirtless, that much he confirmed. And there were poses, specific poses they told him to make. Did you go to the police? I tried. But Richard Thornton was a sitting judge at the time. He had connections everywhere. My lawyer said I'd never win a criminal case, not against him. So we sued for damages, got enough money to send my son to therapy for years, and signed away my right to ever talk about it. You're talking now. Because I'm dying, detective, pancreatic cancer. I've got maybe 6 months. And I'm not spending my last days protecting those men. The recording ended. Morrison looked at me across her desk. This is enough to reopen the investigation. But Mr. Chen, I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Richard Thornton will use every connection he has to shut this down. Your marriage might not survive it. I know. And even if we build a case, even if we prove pattern behavior, he's never going to see the inside of a jail cell. Best case scenario, he loses his reputation, gets restraining orders. But men like him rarely face real consequences. I don't care about consequences. I care about my son being safe. She nodded. Then we proceed. The next month was hell. The story leaked somehow, probably through one of the association members trying to get ahead of it. Local news picked it up. Retired judge under investigation for youth program misconduct. Richard gave an interview, played the victim perfectly, talked about modern hysteria, about good men being destroyed by paranoia, about how a father's jealousy has been weaponized to destroy a lifetime of public service. Lisa's family closed ranks. Her sister Amanda was the only one who stood by us. The rest, aunts, uncles, cousins, all sent messages ranging from disappointed to hostile. How dare we attack Richard? Didn't we know what he'd sacrificed? Lisa filed for separation. Not divorce, not yet. But she moved out, took Jake to Amanda's. Said she needed space to process. I understood. How do you reconcile the father who raised you with the evidence mounting against him? How do you choose between your past and your present? But I also knew, if she chose her father over our son's safety, I'd fight her for custody with everything I had. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the men from that day, the CEO of Thornton Medical, had a crisis of conscience, or maybe he just saw which way the wind was blowing. Either way, he came forward with evidence. Digital files, backup drives, decades of photographs from the association's mentorship program. Most were what they'd claimed artistic portraits, technically legal if deeply uncomfortable. Boys aged 7 to 14, shirtless, in classical poses. But buried in the files were others. More private sessions, images that crossed every line. The CEO brought them to Morrison with his lawyer present, negotiated immunity in exchange for testimony. Within 48 hours, there were arrests. Richard, the state senator, 3 other association members. Federal charges: production of child sexual abuse material, conspiracy, obstruction of justice for the sealed settlements. I got the call from Morrison at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. It's done. He's in custody. I sat down on my kitchen floor and cried. The trial took 14 months. I won't relive all of it. The media circus. The victim impact statements, Patricia Walsh testifying from hospice via video link 3 weeks before she died. The young men, now in their 20s and 30s, who finally felt safe enough to speak. Richard maintained his innocence. Called it a witch hunt, persecution, modern Puritanism. His lawyers were exactly as slick as you'd expect. But the evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted on multiple counts. Sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He'd be 79 when he got out, if he survived that long. The other men received similar sentences. The Fairfield Heritage Association was dissolved, its assets seized. And Lisa finally came home. She'd attended every day of the trial, sat on my side of the courtroom, not her father's, held my hand when the verdict was read. That night, Jake asleep upstairs. We sat in the living room, and she spoke for the first time in hours. I kept thinking there must be some explanation, some context I was missing, because my father, the man who raised me, he couldn't be this person. He couldn't. I waited. But then I remembered things, little things. The way he'd talk about bodies, about innocence. The way he'd get angry if I dated boys who weren't traditional enough. How he'd say women were too emotional, too protective of children, that we needed to let boys be boys. She looked at me. He was grooming me too, wasn't he? Not sexually, but grooming me to accept. To defend, to make excuses. Lisa, I'm sorry. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I almost chose him over Jake. Over you. I almost passed A. I pulled her close and let her cry. Recovery was slow. Jake needed therapy, we all did. Learning to trust again, to feel safe. Dr. Rains worked with Jake twice a week, and slowly he started to smile again, to play without that shadow of fear. Lisa and I did couples counseling. Learned how to talk about the things we'd buried. She was working through complicated grief, mourning the father she'd thought she had while accepting the reality of who he really was. About 6 months after the trial, we got a letter from Patricia Walsh's estate. She'd left us something in her will, a journal she'd kept during her son's involvement with the association. Detailed observations, things Richard had said, red flags she'd noticed but dismissed. At the end, a note addressed to me. Marcus, you did what I couldn't. You believed your child. You fought when it would have been easier to look away. Your son will grow up knowing his father protected him. That matters more than you'll ever know. Thank you for being brave enough to see the truth. Patricia, I kept that letter. On the hard days, when I wonder if I overreacted, if I destroyed our family for nothing, I read it again. It's been 3 years now. Jake is 10, thriving in school, on a soccer team. He talks about what happens sometimes, matter-of-factly, the way kids do once they've processed trauma. When Grandpa was bad and went to jail, Lisa has rebuilt her relationship with her father's victims. She volunteers with an organization that helps families recognize grooming behaviors, turning her guilt into action. As for me, I think about that Saturday a lot, how close I came to dismissing my instincts, how easily I could have told Jake to toughen up, to not be dramatic, to respect his grandfather. How many kids don't have someone who believes them? Last week, I got a call from Detective Morrison. Richard had applied for early release based on health concerns. She wanted to know if I'd write a victim impact statement opposing it. I asked Jake if he wanted to write one too. He's old enough now to decide. He thought about it, then shook his head. I don't think about him anymore, Dad. I don't want to. That's okay. You don't have to. But you can. You can write one. Tell them some people aren't sorry. They're just sorry they got caught. So I did. Told the parole board about the lack of remorse, the continued claims of persecution, about the lives damaged and the trust betrayed. The application was denied. I still think about that phone call sometimes. That text, Dad, the men here are weird. 3 words that saved my son's life, that gave him the courage to ask for help and me the courage to listen. I teach Jake now probably too much, probably with too much urgency, that his voice matters, that his discomfort is valid, that powerful people can be dangerous people, and respect has to be earned, not demanded. He listens, rolls his eyes sometimes because I repeat myself. But I see it in the way he stands up for himself, the way he questions authority when something feels wrong. He's not soft. He's not weak. He's exactly what a man should be: strong enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to ask for help, smart enough to trust himself. And when he's older, when he asks why our family looks different than other families, why he doesn't have a grandfather, I'll tell him the truth. I'll tell him about the day he called me from a bathroom, scared and alone, and how I broke down a door to get to him, and how I'd do it again, every time, no matter what it cost. Because that's what fathers do. Real fathers. Not the kind who hide behind tradition and respectability, but the kind who listen, who believe, who protect. Even when it means burning your whole life down to keep your child safe. Especially then. I'm Marcus Chen. I'm a software engineer, a husband, a father, and I'm the man who kicked down a door when his son needed him. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.